Hello, my name is John Deedy, professor of political science at the community colleges of Baltimore County and local political media analyst. Welcome to the Maryland State Politics and Government podcast on Substack. Today, I am talking with Maryland Senate candidate for the 42nd district, Adam Wood. Welcome aboard.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Glad to do it. First, I'll ask, how's the campaign coming along?
It's going really well. I've run campaigns my whole life. I've run more than I can count. But this is the first time I'm actually being the candidate. It's very different. You don't really expect how different it is, but it's very good. A lot of people giving me a lot of support. A lot of people doing a lot of very kind things, saying very kind things about me. And a lot of endorsements. We've had quite a few endorsements. I think I've got nearly every elected official in Carroll County, and I think I've got half the Senate, the Republican Senate caucus endorsing me at this point. So a lot of momentum, and a lot of excitement.
A good thing for a campaign. My first question is, why are you running?
Well, it's always been, I've always been in politics ever since I could vote and actually before I could vote. Um, it's always been very important to me that whatever I'm doing in life, that it's consequential, that I'm actually helping people. Um, and it, for the last 3 years, I've been serving as the executive director of the Maryland Republican Party. And that's been incredibly rewarding and fulfilling, to help build up the state party and help get Republicans elected. I think I personally think it's very obvious that all of the problems facing Maryland, whether you're talking about affordability, public safety, our crisis in education, they're all direct results of Democrat policies. How can you help people simply by pushing better ideas, simply by pushing practical conservative solutions, in a state where not many people in Annapolis want to hear those solutions?
What do you think the number one issue is for your candidacy and your campaign?
It's kind of a toss-up between the three main issues, that I typically talk about, and that is the ones that I just mentioned: public safety, education, and cost of living. But I think cost of living is number one because I think it encompasses so many different things. It encompasses, our the all the taxes and fees that our wonderful governor that just spoke earlier today have imposed on us, or whether that's the energy prices that are skyrocketing because Democrats have never seen a power plant they didn't want to shut down. I mean, look, I'm all for taking care of the environment, but if you do it at the cost of grandma not being able to turn on her heater, I don't think that's acceptable.
The issue people have talked about, and you did touch on it, is affordability, and it ties in the energy. What do you think the state of Maryland should be doing regarding energy policy?
Well, first of all, they need to reopen power plants, and we need to start looking at nuclear. We need to start producing. We get 40% of our energy from out of state right now. I think that's unacceptable. We need to be a net producer of energy, and we can do that in ways that aren't, what Democrats would say aren't environmentally friendly. And like I said, nuclear to me is a great option. I mean, yes, you can have some solar. I think there's some serious concerns about having solar panels on land that can be used as farmland. But if you want to put it on the top of your home, I don't think that bothers me at all. But that's not going to solve the problem. We need to open power plants, and we also need to, the data centers. That's kind of an issue that's lingering out there, especially with the Piedmont project, where they basically want to put a big extension cord across our state, and fuel the data centers in Virginia without any benefit to Marylanders. I'm not against data centers. I believe in progress. I am a big fan of technology and emerging technologies, but if they are going to build a data center, they need to power the data center, or they need to find a way to power the data center that isn't on the backs of other ratepayers.
Budget is one thing people talk about every single year. What to cut, what to keep, why something should be increased, and it's a salesmanship job of saying we have to spend it here for this reason.
Yep.
if someone came to you and said, here's a red pen, what would you cut out of the budget? What would you do differently to reduce the budget? What would you do?
Well, first and foremost, this so-called blueprint needs to go. It's completely unsustainable. I'm all for funding public education, but we just simply can't afford this. And meanwhile, kids in Baltimore City still can't read. So it's clearly not working. It's clearly a problem that we can't just throw more money on at and solve it. Um, the other thing is, on the other side of the ledger, they decided that one thing that was warranted a cut was disability services. If there's anything that government does that we should provide, it's help for disabled folks. I mean, they're the definition of people that can't help themselves. Um, but there's a lot we could cut, especially when our budget completely eclipses that of Pennsylvania, who has which has far more people than us. We're just the people in Annapolis have never seen a dollar that they didn't want to spend and never saw a tax that they didn't want to raise. And it's just gotten completely out of control. I think part of that is because they don't feel like they're accountable to the voters. All these Democrats are in safe seats, and as long as they get past as long as they get past their primary, they feel like the only people that they're accountable to are these far left activist groups, and I think that that's just a really terrible way to govern.
Things I always like to ask people who run for public office and basically people in general politically, who are the political figures you've always had an admiration for, people that inspired you to kind of get involved in politics?
Um, well, once upon a time, the first real campaign that I jumped on was actually Ron Paul's 2008 presidential campaign. It was really refreshing to, and I'm a little bit older now, so I'm maybe a little less libertarian than I was back then. But I always appreciated a politician that just said what he thought and was completely honest and intellectual to boot. I think Ronald Reagan, I admire quite a bit just because of his eloquence and because of how he could be so inspiring and positive and talking about that shining city on the hill. I think we need more of that. I think we have way too much negativity in our politics. And I think those are kind of the main two for me. I also greatly admired, Dwight Eisenhower. And let's see who else. I think those are kind of the main three, but mostly Ronald Reagan and the Rons, if you will.
You got some good people on the Republican side, really, to look at as a shining city on a hill.
Yes. And I also worked on Capitol Hill for a good 10 years. I worked for a woman named Renee Elmers that represented the Second District of North Carolina for 6 years. Always greatly admired her. She never backed down from a fight. She always stood up for what she thought was right, even if she thought it would jeopardize her seat. And in fact, I think she even said that one time. She said, "I don't covet my seat. I'm going to do what I think is right." And I also worked for a guy represented the Pittsburgh area of Pennsylvania named Keith Rothfuss, one of the smartest men I've ever met, which made it challenging to work for him sometimes because he really, really got in the weeds and in the details of these bills. Wanted to know, okay, this bill is amending the Immigration and Nationalization Act. What does it do? What is the effect? What is the original language? And so I really had to dig in and get in the weeds on policy. And I really respected that he didn't just gloss over things, that he read the bill and that he got into the details.
Touched on this just a little bit just now. What do you think the role of ICE should be in Maryland? Because there's been a lot of controversy,
Yep.
regarding agreements with various jurisdictions. At the same time, people have been a little spooked about agents wearing masks. What side do you come down on some of this stuff?
So I think part of this conversation that gets lost. So I like to start the conversation out with this. These people should not be here in the first place. And none of this would be happening if we didn't have an administration, the last administration, that opened the floodgates purposely and tried to flood us with people that just legally should not be here. The law is the law, and the law has been the law for quite a while. This is frankly an issue that has been festering in our country since Ronald Reagan, And nobody's really had the courage to do it. I actually sat in a room with Paul Ryan and a bunch of other congressional leaders back in I want to say it was 2014, around there, and we had an immigration bill. We had an immigration bill to fix a lot of this stuff, and not just enforcement, not just border security, but also, what are you going to do with the kids that were born here and all that stuff. We had not only a bill, but we had a whip count that said that we had the votes in the House and the Senate to pass this thing and send it to then President Barack Obama. Um, John Boehner told Barack Obama, "Look, we've got a good thing going here, and don't quote poison the punch bowl, right?" And he said it again and again. And what did Barack Obama do? He issued the DACA executive order, I think purposely to turn over the apple cart and derail that legislation. And it worked. It angered and upset a lot of conservatives, and then so that whip count fell apart. Um, so I believe President Obama purposely sabotaged immigration reform, and we would not be here had that not happened. So the ICE thing is an overcorrection. It is admittedly an overcorrection, but it's one that I think is needed, because we need to get the criminal illegal aliens out as quickly as possible. These are not good people. These are people that were let out of prisons in Venezuela and told to go north. These are people that I think people don't understand how bad the border security problem was under Joe Biden. I would talk to members of Congress that went on congressional delegations down to the border, down south of the California border, and what you would see on that side of the wall is empty Plan B wrappers and empty condom wrappers because the women being trafficked across the border by the cartels knew that it was a given that they would be raped. That is disgusting. This was one of the worst humanitarian crises that we've ever seen on this planet, and it was done purposefully. So I really don't think, again, I think that there's a lot that gets lost in this conversation, and I think that that's a point that really needs to be repeated, is how bad this was and what the human cost was. Um, but to address specifically what you're talking about, ICE. I think clearly what we saw in Minneapolis or Minnesota was, again, this is an overcorrection. These people were trying to hire as many ICE agents as quickly as possible. My mom was a law enforcement agent, so I know what the rules of engagement are, and I know that there's a lot of training that they have to go through, and a lot of the training isn't just, oh, you do this if you do this. You have to have it ingrained in your brain, right? You have to have muscle memory, and I think so. The guy that shot the woman that was trying to run him over. I think that was probably, I mean, everybody's got their opinion. We've got the luxury of hindsight and looking at camera angle, 8 different camera angles. But I tend to think that guy really did think that his life was in danger. Whether it was or not, he thought he thought he was. The other situation where the guy got shot, I think that was pretty unfortunate. I think the guy probably overreacted. But again, hindsight's 2020, and we have that luxury. He didn't. Um, but I think that it's clear that they need to focus more on training and that they need to make sure that these people do it properly. But I will say one thing. You did mention the masks. Um, I find this a really interesting issue because the people saying that I shouldn't wear masks are the same people that told us they would arrest us if we didn't wear masks during COVID. They're also the same people that support protesters wearing masks. The reason, and I need everybody to be very clear on this, the reason that ICE wears masks is because the cartel has a history of tracking down and killing their families.
My next question, or last question, kind of to get everything summarized, is one of the big economic engines in Baltimore County and your district is CCBC, the Community Colleges of Baltimore County.
Yep.
What type of commitment are you willing to make to increase funding for the college or do things to kind of help it economically grow so the county can grow?
Yeah, community colleges are incredibly important. I don't have any specifics, but I would absolutely be willing to talk to their leadership and see what they need and advocate for that for sure.
Okay. I want to thank you again for your time. It has been a great informative session, and take care and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you very much. The website is woodformd.com.
Great.